And in this session, we will first of all be having a very special event, a conversation, an interview with the 2021 World Food Prize laureate and global lead in food nutrition, public health, working at WorldFish, Dr. Shakuntala Thilsted. This interview will be done by Derek Johnson of the University of Manitoba, but let me say a few introductory words about Dr. Thilsted, Shakuntala. Dr. Thilsted was awarded the 2021 World Food Prize laureate for her groundbreaking research, critical insights, and landmark innovations in developing holistic, nutrition-sensitive approaches to aquatic food systems, including fisheries and aquaculture. Often referred to as the Nobel Prize for Food and Agriculture, the World Food Prize is the most prominent global award recognizing an individual who has enhanced human development and confronted global hunger through improving the quality, quantity, and availability of food for all. Shakuntala holds a PhD in physiology of nutrition and was the first to examine the nutritional composition of small native fish species commonly found and consumed in Bangladesh and Cambodia. Her research demonstrated that these affordable and locally available foods offered life-changing benefits for children's cognitive development in their first 1,000 years of life and the nutrition and health of their mothers. Working together with local communities and private sector actors, Shakuntala has guided the development of innovative, affordable, and culturally acceptable fish-based products suitable for consumption by young children and lactating women. The Maritime team is delighted that Shakuntala, who is both an interdisciplinary as well as a devoted transdisciplinary scholar, has accepted its invitation for an interview on the societal relevance of her work. Derek Johnson, professor of anthropology at the University of Manitoba and a long-standing member of MARA, is taking on the role of interviewer. So please, Derek, the floor is yours, and Shakuntala.
Thank you very much, Martin, for introducing the session. Shakuntala, it's a real pleasure and have a conversation with you. We've talked many times over the years about our shared interest in dried fish in particular. This discussion has a bit more of a formal quality to it than our usual conversations, but I'd like to keep that conversational quality as much as possible, and maybe we can imagine ourselves sitting together in Penang over a really nice cup of coffee, as we've done in the past. As a social scientist speaking with you at a social science conference, as Martin mentioned, I'm going to be focusing on questions that social scientists, are prone to ask. So I'm really interested in the human aspects of this really important work that you've been involved in. So I'm going to ask you questions broadly about the substance of your life's work, what that substance means in relationship to the World Food Prize, the changing context of your work over the course of your career, place of inter and transdisciplinary collaborations in your work, and about yourself, you as a person. How is who you are as a person shaped your work? All right. So with that little introduction said, let me get down to some questions. Okay. So the first question I want to ask you is of course about what has brought you to even greater prominence this year, and that's the World Food Prize. So I'd really like to know from you what winning the World Food Prize means for the goals that you hold dear in your work.
Thank you so much, Derek. And it's such a pleasure to have you interview me. I mean, I was asked, who would I choose? And I said you, because I've always enjoyed the work we've done together, and I've always enjoyed the conversations we have together, us coming from quite different parts of the one common agenda that we are trying to work with. And it's truly such an important piece of work that you are leading with Dried Fish Matters, which is some of the dreams I have had with my work for a long time, and which you are now putting into force. And Martin, you have always been not really a mentor, but someone I should, because I haven't worked with you really, but someone I've always looked up to for all the work you've done with others, all the places that you have been, especially the work you've done in India and in Sri Lanka. And it's always has been so good for me to look towards your work and to try to emulate some of what you have been doing also with your students. So of course, Derek, as Martin said, this is a high honor, perhaps the highest honor one can get when you work in the field that I work in food and nutrition security. So I'm deeply honored to be given the award in 2021. And there aren't very many women who have received this award. So that's also an honor for me, representing women in research and representing women who work in this field. Also, there hasn't been much recognition, as you know too well, about aquatic foods, fish, other aquatic foods, and aquatic food systems within the broader narrative of food and nutrition security. And me getting this author and my work on fish and aquatic food systems is truly a recognition, and it values an under-recognized area of importance within the whole agricultural development and food and nutrition globally. So it is truly an honor. And I do hope that this platform, I mean, I have so many hopes and aspirations. I've always had that. But now having this platform perhaps can realize some of those hopes and aspirations, not only for myself, but for those who come after me and work in this area.
Thank you. I think I want to immediately ask two follow-up questions to your answer. And the first one is about fish as food. And I'm wondering where you see us in this transition to considering the nutritional powerhouse that is fish. Are we at the beginning of this sort of global awakening, the idea of fish, particularly in the sort of international policy circles where you work? Or do you think that transition towards including the micronutrient rich fish, and particularly small fish, is something that's well underway already?
Well, it should have been underway with the work that I started, because I guess I've been doing this work for over 20 years, but I would still say it's in the beginning of this. And having people like you begin with dried fish matters and your work on that really is a great push. But if you ask me, where are we? At the beginning, there is so much more to do, but having this prize is important because of the recognition it gives and puts fish and aquatic food systems in the limelight on the global stage. And also importantly, at this stage, as you know, I work at WorldFish, as Martin introduced me. WorldFish is one of the CGIAR entities. This year, the CGIAR, which is this global entity for agricultural research, is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And they have taken the move on paper. Let's see how it works in practice, that the mission and the vision is about food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis. And for the past 50 years and even before, much of the work in agricultural development, in food and nutrition security, has focused on a few stable crops and on livestock. And one of the reasons perhaps for this and why fish has not made it is because of the paucity of data with respect to the value of fish. And with the work I work with, the data is quite scarce on the multiple benefits of fish. And if we will just look at nutrition and the nutritional composition of fish, this is this work is new. I started much of this work in Bangladesh just some years ago, where we realized that, especially with the small indigenous fish species, we began first in Bangladesh, then in Cambodia, and, and looking at the nutrient composition, we could see that these foods, these fish species, were, as I would call them, superfoods, because of the content of the multiple micronutrients. The bioavailability of these micronutrients is so high that you need small amounts to meet the nutrient needs, especially of vulnerable population groups.
Fascinating. Okay, so we're at a moment then where this very important set of global organizations, the CG system, is making a large-scale institutional transformation. We're also at a moment where fish is beginning to be picked up for some of the reasons you suggested, but you've also raised some of the constraints that allow fish to be taken up. So we'll come back a little bit to the broader institutional context of your work in a minute, but again, going back to the World Food Prize award that you've received, do you see that award as sort of catapulting forward within a food system or a kind of food systems framing to the work you're doing, and therefore institutionally embedding the work that you're doing in a way that will really allow it to have the impact that it deserves?
I truly believe this, and I do think we are at the crossroads of what we can do. So if I would take an entry point, which I would term a nutrition sensitive approaches, but even in doing so, it must be broader, because normally within the field of agriculture, even if you would move from feeding the billions to nourishing people, then you would many people within agriculture will stop with the food, the supply chains, and the consumption of the food. But what I think is important is not just the food. We have to have a people-centered approach. So it's the people who engage across the whole food systems approach, and not just in production and those who give the inputs to production, but also those engaged in the supply chains, importantly those who consume food, and even all the way to the waste and loss of foods. So I think that having a people-centered approach gives us the entry point for multiple combinations, multiple entries, and multiple stages of working with the food systems approach.
Okay, of course, what you said is music to the ears of social scientists. You're saying that people need to be at the forefront, and of course, as social scientists, that is our focus. And you're saying that there are, that by having a people-centered approach, that opens up multiple different points of getting into food systems and sort of raising the various ways in which food systems can perform well, or that they can run into problems. Okay, so that's a very nice segue then to the next area that I'd like to talk with you about, and that's your relationship to the social sciences and more broadly, your interdisciplinary relationships and your transdisciplinary relationships. So also, your powerful ability to work closely with practitioners, people, farmers, fishers. Okay, so but first about social science and your collaborations with social scientists. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've worked with social scientists in the work that you've done, and maybe elaborate just a little bit more on this people-centered approach? What are some of the insights that we can draw on from social science that strengthen that people-centered approach, and how have they played out in your work?
So perhaps this is new for many. I mean, we're talking a lot about fish, aquatic foods, and aquatic food systems. But I started working with the main food in Bangladesh, which is rice, and then the second main food, which is vegetables. And then I turned to fish, and I stayed with fish because of it, because of, as I described before, it's very, very it's it being a superfood in terms of micronutrients and essential fatty acids. But one of the things that I started doing when I started working with in Bangladesh, and I knew from my background as in nutritional science, the importance of diversity and the importance of diversity of landscapes, diversity of geographies, diversity of people, habits, culture. And to me, diversity is the foundation of all what we touch. And beginning with that diversity, I began with having people, and it was in Bangladesh I worked, and then Cambodia, working with people and asking them to characterize that the foods they eat. And I did not begin with production, I began with consumption. And the stories and the narratives were extremely rich, and the nuances were extremely profound. You know, they would tell me about which rice varieties would be good if you were a laborer, and which rice varieties would be good if you're an elderly person, a sick person, a young child. And when we came to fish, that was extremely fascinating because they could tell me the names of up to 100 fish species, and they could tell me the characteristics of course, they did not know the names of the micronutrients, but they would tell me that this fish is good for eyesight. This fish is good for making you strong, giving you strong blood. This fish is good for a pregnant woman. This fish is good for a young child. And with those characteristics, by the people themselves and their own voices, I could then, with my background, my scientific background, and with the work I will be doing in the lab, I will be able to link that to the scientific evidence. So for me, that has been the most fascinating part of the work I do. And this combination of starting with the people, starting with people-centered approaches, with their narratives, with their knowledge, traditional knowledge, and then moving that to scientific evidence. And then bringing it back to the people.
Yeah, so that speaks to the additional quality of this work. It's a two-way conversation as well. But you know, the social science element that comes out to me in your answer is the importance of listening and the importance of open listening. You know, letting the people that we're working with present the way they understand. And you know, as a scientist, and I'm sure the examples that you cited there, the examples of nourishing the blood, for example, are ones that are thought provoking for scientists as well, and you probably go, aha, yeah, they actually they get it. This is what this
Yes.
particular micronutrient does.
But Derek, what one and where I think we fall short as scientists is that we listen, we try to understand, but we listen only to the issues and the problems. We haven't yet found out how to listen and learn about the solutions.
But is that
And
actually listening?
well, yeah, perhaps not. Huh? That's the perhaps the big issue. We do not know how to listen properly because we stop at the issues, but we do not go further to working with the people and using what they are telling us to find the solutions, and to making sure that the solutions are fit for the issues that the people themselves face. We very often, we as scientists, make the solutions that fit our understanding of the problems and not that of the people.
Well, and of course, no history of agricultural development policy that even this sort of halfway kind of listening is not one that historically was normal. You know, historically, scientists and policymakers thought that they had the answers and that they needed to be delivered to the people. And I hate to say it, but I think that attitude sometimes still prevails in places. But this is getting us into the sort of institutional context of your work. And so again, I'm going to postpone that part of the discussion. And I would ask the audience, you know, take notes. I can imagine that there are some provocative things being said here that will stimulate questions at the conclusion of our conversations. We'd like to bring the rest of you in at that point. But I want to focus now on the Center for Maritime Research. So the Center for Maritime Research is a little over 20 years old. It's had a really successful track record over those years under Martin's leadership. The conference series is one of the examples of that success. The Maritime Studies Journal, the book series, and so on. But one of the features of the work that the Center for Maritime Research has done over the last number of years, and for quite some time actually, is that it seemed to have taken on the role of integrating young students, late undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate students into the world of social science, even though often they're coming from a natural science training. And so if you go to the Mara conferences, you see lots and lots of students with that background in mind. And over the course of your career, you've sort of intuitively made that transition and into a more holistic perspective. But given that Mara does appeal to that particular audience or that particular group, two, I guess, do you have any advice for Mara on how to continue to cultivate those relationships? And two, looking at it from the other perspective, do you have any advice for students who are making that, that transition, that, they're naturally science trained, but they're thinking, okay, I need some social science to help me better understand the world within which sort of the natural science questions that I have can be made meaningful?
So if I would answer the first question first, I think we already in Mara 2019, Derek, got a really good example and that we could follow going forward. And it's such a shame this year that we can't meet in person and that what we are doing is virtually. So you remember in Mara 2019, we gathered a group of young scientists from many different fields, working in many different parts of the globe, young professionals, and we did we did nearly a week-long session with them, with different with meeting different scientists from different disciplines. And if you remember that, I'm still in touch with some of those young professionals, and those young professionals have kept that group together. They have published as a group together they have published work on COVID-19. And that was such a profound and beautiful example as to how Mara can work forward. It would be nice, one thing I would say, that we could open up this group of young professionals and make sure that we get many more young professionals from Asia and Africa, Latin America, from different parts of the globe. And I really think, perhaps I'm old-fashioned, but I do think the physical meeting and being able to discuss together, being able to support each other is extremely important. yes, these virtual media give us other possibilities, but I do think we should have both. And I really hope that Mary will be able to continue this with young professionals. It was so profound, and I got so much out of it myself, and I could see how much the young professionals got out of it. So
Yes,
I
well,
think we
yeah,
already, I think we already have an answer as to how to move forward. And I know we won't have Martin with us, but we will always think about how hard he worked to get to set up Mari 2019 and set up that part of the program.
absolutely. And I think we also have to give credit to Yuri Skoltons,
Oh
who
yes,
was
yes, yes,
critical.
yes.
And I think Yuri, in fact, the idea may have come from Yuri originally, and Yuri did all the organization and management of that. And then we should also acknowledge that one of the graduates of that Mara Summer School from 2019, Sharon Suri, has organized this conference for us.
Yes,
So
yes.
these are people doing big, important things.
It's
And
amazing,
so
and
thank you. Yeah, that's
it's amazing how you. I mean, for me, it has been wonderful to see the growth in these young professionals.
yes, absolutely. And it's humbling and inspiring to be working with them. But that takes me to another question about mentorship. And I know that mentorship is a very important part of who you are, and I know that you value that and prioritize that. I'd love to hear some reflections from you on the importance of mentorship in these kinds of collaborative frameworks, summer schools, transdisciplinary projects, food systems work. And how do you see mentorship, and what is the importance of mentorship in terms of building capacity to address pressing questions that we work on together?
Well, first of all, mentorship gives you the strength and gives you the possibility to believe in yourself. And without believing in yourself and believing that you can reach, the highest mountain, then nothing is going to happen. And I have been extremely lucky throughout my life, um, from the very beginning. I would say I'm born and brought up in Trinidad and Tobago. Um, I've I've I've, I started in missionary schools, um, Presbyterian missionaries who came from Canada, from age 4 to age 16, and then off to university. And then I changed countries. I got married, went to Denmark, and started at the university in Denmark. And throughout my whole career, I have been extremely fortunate to have very good mentors. And as I said, importantly, the belief in yourself, and that others believe in you and know that you can reach places. But now, where I am, and for many years, I mean, I've been in this for long, I see this as one of my most important tasks. And the way I put it, and I say it to many when people ask me, oh, you use so much time on young professionals. Why do you do it? And it part of it is also egoistic. I say, can you imagine having an idea, and putting it towards a young person, and that person runs with it and takes it to heights and takes it to places that you can never imagine. So if we need to progress as as societies, as people, as we have to make sure that this role of being mentor and mentoring and moving forward from generations continues, or else we would lose so much and we would lose the possibility to progress.
Yeah, that's
There are
marvelous.
times there are times where I have many emails in my inbox to answer. The ones that come first are the young professionals who write to me and ask me for advice.
Yeah, no, I love your answer, and I love it because I can read into it, a very anthropological perspective. It's mentorship is a relationship. It's not just the knowledge that somebody who's experienced in a field conveys. It's more than that. It's about the sort of embodied practice of being a successful researcher or a successful guide. And the anthropological literature is full of examples of apprenticeship kinds of arrangements, initiation kinds of arrangements, which speak to these powerful connections across the generations that are so important in terms of building the kind of density of society. That's it's so critical. So I really love your answer. Thank you. But the other side of this story of building dense, meaningful, important relationships is other things, other less positive things you've observed about the environment within which you've worked over these many years. And in our previous conversations, you've talked to me about some of the more, let's say, corrosive or simplifying tendencies that exist in that world. And these are the non-listening kinds of tendencies that exist in that world, and also there are broader institutional political like dynamics in the world in which you so successfully work. The CG system, the World Bank, these big FAO, these big international players, and I don't want to push you to say things you don't want to say publicly, but at the same time, within the limits of what you feel comfortable saying, I'd really love to hear some of your critical reflections on that world and the challenges of working in that world.
And this goes back also to my area of research. So many ask me, what do you see as one of your greatest challenges going forward? And I say to them, well, it's this shift from feeding billions, feeding the world's population, to nourishing people, nourishing nations, and nourishing our planet. Because with that shift, you also bring in, as I mentioned before, you cannot make that shift without having a people-centered approach. And what I have seen, I think, in the areas I work, I've seen that a lot of the solutions have been technological solutions without taking into perspective a people-centered approach. You can have machines, you can have data, you can have food products, but if they are not in the hands of people and put to good use, then you will get nowhere. So having people at the center throughout is extremely important. And I think that I don't know if we've had it and if it has been better and we've lost some of it. I won't be able to say where we are, looking at the past, looking at the future, but I would very much like to say that I do hope it takes more center stage than it has taken in the recent past.
Well,
and we have it now, and we have it now. You can see with the COVID-19 pandemic. In extremely important solution to this is having vaccinations, but if you would look at what's happening and how it's being, how the solutions are being used, what you need to put in place so that the vaccines work, it's much more than just the technological solution. I think COVID-19 and the responses we have is showing very much as to what kinds of approaches we need in order to make a world that's better to nourish all people, nourish nations, and nourish the planet.
When you say that, though, I mean, on the one hand, the response to COVID-19 has been a fabulous technological success in the rapidity with which those vaccines were produced.
Yes. Yes.
But I think you're hinting that the context within which those vaccines were rolled out reflects persistent problems in the way the world works, in global inequalities that have failed to spread the benefits of that technological success. And so I guess I don't want to divert on COVID-19, but are there, in the context of the sort of failure to address social justice around vaccine distribution, are there lessons there about a human-centered approach that we need to keep in mind? And maybe are there lessons there that we could translate back into priorities for addressing nutritional deficits? Because there's a similar technological focus in the nutritional interventions. So how do we not get carried away by the technological, and how do we instead bring out other kinds of important knowledge?
Well, I see changes, I see hope, and if I would give some examples that presently from some of high-level meetings, conferences, gatherings that we have. If we would take the United Nations Food Systems Summit, which would take place this year, there is a push by many, and a push that others must step back and listen and learn and work together with, for example, indigenous peoples, tradition and knowledge, and find the ways as to how we can get solutions. This is a particular example I'm giving, getting solutions for more people-centered, nutrition-sensitive food systems that bring into play traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and I am sure that we are also smart enough to combine that with the technological advancements we are making today. The platforms we have, with, for example, digital platforms, a combination of those two different worlds can be so powerful and can bring us much further and much faster in meeting the sustainable development goals that we have set for ourselves up to 2030.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I like talking with you so much, because you have this enduring hope. You have this enduring optimism that we can pull these pieces together. And I think that's probably a very good place for us to draw the interview to a close, because I think we're pretty much at time. So I'm looking forward to continuing many more conversations with you, Shakuntala. It's fabulous. We're not over yet, though. We now need to pull the audience in here, and so I just got over the chat, and I see there's a lot of friendly back and forth between folks, but I don't actually see any questions emerging yet. And I know that this has been a very provocative discussion, and I'd really like the audience to step forward now and provide us with some more questions for Shakuntala to address. So it's over to you, folks. Nothing so far. I think it's the usual gap at the end of an information-rich, provocative presentation. the people are all nervous, like everyone is nervous at the end of a lecture in class to raise their hand. So here's one. Amal can always be relied upon to give us a question. So Amal would like to ask you, Shakuntala, for some more information on the experiment on Odisha with WorldFish. And if you could just explain a little bit about that project and some of the outcomes.
So it's not an experiment. It's very much built on many years of work, starting, as I said, in Bangladesh and Cambodia. So by the time we've moved to begin working in Odisha, we have already worked on nutrition-sensitive aquatic food systems approaches for over 20 years. But what was extremely powerful in Odisha is that the state government of Odisha and the communities of Odisha perhaps we were better at explaining what we meant by nutrition sensitive approaches, and they bought into the ideas immediately. And if some of you had listened to Mrs. Anu Garg today, in one of the sessions that we had, where the department of that deals with school feeding programs, that deals with mother and child health programs, which has nothing to do with nutrition sensitive aquatic food systems, but they saw the benefits of nutrition sensitive aquatic food systems. They saw the benefits of fish products, dried fish products that can be used in mother and child health care programs, in school feeding programs for benefits, multiple benefits: cognitive development in children, growth and development, well-being of women. So we were very, very lucky that Odisha was the first state we moved into, and that it worked for us. The state government was right for these ideas about nutrition sensitive approaches. One of the things that quickly the state realized is that when we began working in homesteads with pond polyculture systems, large and small fish in the same homestead pond, then the state officials quickly came up with the idea: we have these water bodies, the village tanks, we have women's self-help associations. Why don't we make these resources available to the women's associations, and they can put in place these nutrition sensitive approaches for greater production of diverse fish species, greater sale of fish, thereby more income in the hands of women, nutrition sensitive messages, and thereby greater consumption of fish by women and children in their homes. So there are such great examples that stem from Odisha, also in Assam where we are working. And I really, really do hope that other states listening in today and other researchers, associations, communities from India, different states of India, will take on these approaches, and we will be able to scale in many parts of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakuntala. We have two more questions in the chat. This one is from Shakun, and she's asking, what do you see as the best possible outcome or actions from the UN Food System Summit, specifically for aquatic and blue foods?
So Sonia, one of the things that I would like to see, and now the Food System Summit, as I say, goes across production systems, food consumption, people engaged in the food systems, resilience to shocks. But one of the things that I would like to see and hope to see is that aquatic foods are recognized as superfoods, as highly nutritious foods, and that these are used in solutions such as now is happening in Odisha with school feeding programs, with safety net programs, which are extremely important now in the responses we are having to COVID-19, with so many people who are the numbers of malnourished people increasing, so that we should at least take this point in time. And when we put safety net programs into place, it's not just maize in Africa or rice in Asia, but it's combinations of diverse foods that would nourish people and nourish nations.
Presumably, those combinations come from careful interactions with people in context, so that the foods are contextually appropriate, which I know you're very much invested in.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do without having culturally acceptable foods and within diets. I mean, that's the first step, or else there is no, you can't move.
Wonderful. Okay, we have a question now from Tony Charles, and it's a big question. So trust Tony to make you think on your feet. Can you discuss how you see climate change interacting with food security over time in the context of fish as food and nutrition?
Well, that's, as you said, Derek, that's a big question. And that's not my area of competence, but I would tell what I see from my area of competence. So when we have talked about nutrition sensitive approaches to fish production, particularly in aquaculture, one of the approaches that we have seen that works is for smallholders is polyculture, diverse production systems. For example, pond polyculture of large and small fish, also ponds which are connected to rice fields for parts of the year, so a continuum of production systems. And we have seen that these production systems, they are much more climate resilient and much more climate smart than large monoculture systems where you rely perhaps on one fish species and you rely on greater inputs to production, such as greater inputs of feeds, greater inputs having to use inputs to have to have a production system. For example, what's the word I'm looking for? When if you would have diseases and you would have to fight diseases, then you would have to have a system that also uses antibiotics. That's the word I'm looking for. Whereas if you would have a system that is much more nature positive, then you need lesser inputs, you can have a much more resilient system. And we have seen with the systems that we have built up in Bangladesh, especially for smallholders, that it gives you higher productivity, higher production, a production of a higher nutritional quality and more income. So there are multiple benefits of having a nutrition sensitive approach.
Okay, thank you, Shakuntala. We are getting close to time here. We've got 3 more really interesting questions in the chat, and I'm going to have to wind up the questions after that. And in fact, we may have to pick and choose between these questions. But let me start with one that is quite focused, and this one comes from Marluz Khan. So Marluz asks, is there an important link between where fish are caught and where a fish is eaten from a nutritional angle?
Well, some of our colleagues have done work showing that those who live close to water bodies have greater, especially children, have greater intakes of fish than those who live further away from water bodies. But that doesn't mean that the solution is we have to move all people to water bodies. I mean, the solution is that we should ensure that diverse, nutritious foods and products reach to all population groups, and especially to the poor and vulnerable. And now you have lots of the urban population group are poor and vulnerable. So you would need to ensure that a superfood as fish is presented as developed into products that can reach to population groups that are far away from water bodies.
So, and picking up on Marlus's question, then this is, it's almost in a sense a luxury to prioritize eating local fish when the need is to be able to distribute fish at distance in order to be able to spread out those nutritional benefits. Would that be?
But that's especially true with fish being a superfood. And Derek, in the work we do with dried fish is 5 times the superfood, or 4 times, because you're removing the moisture content and you're up concentrating the nutrients. And then these products, as for example, dried fish or dried fish powder, they have a long shelf life. They can be stored easily. They can travel long distances. So we must find ways where we can move this superfood, which is fish, to all population groups. And as I said, especially the poor and vulnerable.
All right. So the value chain component of food systems is really important to attend to.
Yes.
So we have a question from Hilda Tonen, who congratulates you on the really interesting answers, and then asks, we should challenge ourselves to look for answers that fit the understanding of scientists and other groups. So thinking about the them in quotation marks is really important. So these policymakers, industry, and other actors important in food systems. Her question is, how do we build connections to these diverse groups who often have very different interests?
Yes, and how do we build connections, and especially and that brings me back to so policymakers, industries, and other actors, they are the ones who work on the premise that they will form the solutions for the issues that people face. And as I said at the beginning, I do not think that works. And we have seen it doesn't work. So policymakers must be able to understand the issues, but also the solutions that, for example, if you would go to Africa and work with women who are, in the processing of fish, in the drying of fish, in the trading of fish, and you talk to them, they have their own solutions, which are very different from those of government officials. So you must ensure that you bring all the groups together and you work on the solutions that work for the people, and that the people, well, here, as I said, women processors, women traders, they will take on, and they would use these solutions to meet their goals and aspirations. They're the ones who have to enact it, not the policymakers. So you need this connection.
That is a conversation we are definitely going to have to pick up again, Shakuntala, because this ideal scenario of having policymakers adopt a sensitivity to local indigenous perspectives, that's not a given. That's not a straightforward step.
Derek, if I would go to the Food Systems Summit now, a very important step has been taken in this direction, and there have been thousands of dialogues held across actors and across all groups in order to ensure that we reach to these game-changing solutions which work for people. We are not there yet. We are still focused on the issues and not on the solutions, but steps have been taken.
And of course, as all of us know in fishery social science, this is not a new issue. The Spain Yentoffs of the world, the Tony Charles of the world, the Martin Bavings of the world have been working on precisely this for decades. Okay, so we are pretty much at time, but let me end. I'm going to have to apologize to Josh, but I won't have time to get to your question. But Christopher Giordano has asked a two-part question. So he's asking first, basically, what are the priorities for research in terms of for the contribution of aquatic foods to food and nutrition security? That's part one. Part two, though, is that he's focusing that question on one particular new addition to FishBase, which is the recent launch of fish nutrients as a component of FishBase.
Yes, yeah. So, okay, so if I would, I mean, the work that we have done and the work that we are doing, and as we've hinted today, we've just scratched the surface. And Derek knows this too well when he asks me scientific questions on dried fish, and he asks me, simple things as, what's the moisture content and what's the up concentration you talk about? What percentage would you put on that? So that's where the data is. We've just scratched the surface on knowing what are the composition of different aquatic foods and different aquatic food species. And we've tried to answer some of those issues by developing the fish nutrients. I mean, I'm just a small part of it. We are many who have been engaged in that. With respect to when you ask me about what do we need as a focus on research, I would still say it's data. Our understanding of who are engaged in, if I would just take small-scale fisheries, who are engaged in small-scale fisheries, where they are engaged, what times of the year they engage, what kinds of engagement, what do they capture, that we have so little data. And when we have so little data, then the area and the people who are engaged in this area, they remain invisible and they remain unrecognized. So we should use some of our research investments on getting better data.
Okay, Martin has popped up, which means we are actually really out of time. I do just want to say, though, Shakuntala, you clarified one important nutritional question for me, which was absolutely baffling. We were reading all these papers on dried fish, and we could not figure out what ash was. Why are they trying to figure out the content of ash in dried fish? So you solved that for us, and I appreciate it. Thank you. So Martin, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Derek and Shakuntala, for this wonderful interview. It was very interesting to listen to and very inspiring. So thank you both very much.